everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm here today to talk about every book that I read in May and June. Just a caveat, it is like the 28th of June when I'm filming this, so I might end up finishing one more book, but honestly it's kind of unlikely. So these are very likely to be all of the books that I read in May and June, but if I do sneak one in, I'll talk about that in my July wrap up. But I also apologise if you can hear any background noise. I do have the windows in this room closed, but it's so disgustingly hot today that I've had to have the windows in the rest of the house open. So I'm sorry if you can hear any outdoor / background noise. But without further ado, let's get into all of the books that I read in May and June, ranked from worst to best. I can't remember exactly what I read in which month, so we're not gonna specify that. But the worst book I read was Unravel Me, and I actually DNF'd it, hence why it kind of has to go at the bottom. It is the only book that I've hard DNF'd. There's a couple of books I'm not going to talk about in this video that I've started and not finished because I'm going to try and read them again next month. So this is the only one that I have properly decided I will not be continuing. This is a hockey romance. It's the third book in a series by Becca Mack, and I really liked the first one in the series. The second one was okay. This one was not okay. I did read this in a vlog. Well, tried to read this in a vlog, so I've spoken about kind of why I didn't like it in a bit more detail, but to give a brief rundown, it's the dialogue that really does it in these books for me, and it was especially highlighted because this book is so insta-love. At least in the other two we had a little bit of tension, especially in the first one. There was quite a lot of back and forth, will they, won't they? The second one, they got together a bit more quickly, but not insta-love. There was still a barrier as to why they shouldn't be together. This one, there's no tension, no barriers, no nothing. They're just in love on page 2. So, not for me. And in terms of the dialogue, basically these characters, usually in a book when the characters have emotional thoughts, and there might be a couple of paragraphs describing their thoughts of how they feel about the other person. Well, everyone in these books just said it out loud, and you might think, oh, that's sweet. It's not sweet, because it happens all the time. They are incapable of keeping anything inside their heads. They just have to say everything with the most amount of words that they could possibly use at every given juncture. And therefore, I didn't see the point in continuing. I got to around page 170 and it felt like the whole relationship had happened. So, DNF. The second worst book I read, I don't have a physical copy of, but I've got a post-it note to remind me where I was going to put it in the stack, and it is Heat of the Everflame by Penn Cole. This is the third book in the Kindred Curse saga, and I gave this 1 star. That's very rare for me. Usually if I feel like I'm going to give a book 1 star, I will just DNF. It's very rare that I finish a book that I feel that negatively about. But this book was over 1,000 pages, so I just kept gaslighting myself into thinking that it would get better, and it didn't. And everyone loves this series so much. I won't talk about this one too much now because I actually did read the other 2 this month. They are elsewhere in this stack. So I'll talk a bit more about the premise of the series when I get to the first one in the series. But just know that I did not love this, and for me it did not get better. So if you are on the first or second book and you're thinking, I don't know if this is for me, specifically if you don't love the female main character and the way that she goes about things and you're hoping that that would get better, in my opinion, it gets worse. That was the main reason that I didn't love this book. It was too long. The female main character was making the same mistakes, the same stupid rash decisions over and over and over again, and the love interest by this point in the series feels like a 2D simp, but not I love a simp. I love it when the man is down bad. I don't mean it in that way. I mean he has no personality. He's not a human being in his own right. He is there purely to love the female main character, except it makes no sense why he loves her because she's an awful person. The third to worst book, I don't know, The Baby Dragon Cafe. This one wasn't, I feel bad honestly putting this all the way down here, but ultimately I did give it 2.5 stars. I'd say most of the books from here up are just middling, they were just okay. I think we've got over the 2 books that I actively felt dislike towards. The rest of these are just fine. I will tell you what I rated them all as we get to them, but this was a 2.5, which sounds really low, but if you think about it, that's halfway to 5, so it's not actually an awful rating. It was the writing style in this one for me. The characters felt really juvenile, despite the fact that they are supposed to be fully grown adults. They just didn't feel like that to me. They felt really, really young. And it was in third person, which I said in the reading blog where I read this, is not inherently a problem. I will never, oftentimes I won't actually notice if a book is in third person, or it definitely won't, I clock it, but it doesn't bother me. It would never put me off reading a book. I really don't have a preference between first and third, but I think it can be more difficult to write, not badly, but in a less captivating way when it's in third person. It can just be more difficult. What I mean by that is I felt no emotion at any point in this book. It very much felt like we were being told everything and not shown anything, and I think it's easier to fall into that trap when you write in third person of just telling us everything that the characters are feeling instead of having any nuance and showing us what they are feeling. So yeah, I didn't love this. I didn't hate it. Like, it was a cute little book. Look at the cover, it's adorable. I didn't even tell you what it was about. Basically, our main character, Saphira, she really likes dragons, but in the world that she lives in, dragons exist, but they tend to be owned by like the same families over generations. So if you're not born into a family that has dragons, it's kind of rare that you would be able to get one. They're very, very expensive to keep. They're very destructive. They breathe fire on everything and kind of break everything. So yeah, she kind of knows that it's not in the cards for her to have a dragon of her own, but she loves being around them. So her dream is to open a baby dragon cafe, which she does, because where they live as well, baby dragons typically aren't allowed into establishments because they're even more destructive than older dragons, because like they've not got control of their flames yet. So she opens a cafe and allows baby dragons in, and you kind of follow her on that journey. And there's a romance, but it's very half-baked romance. I just felt like neither the cafe element or the romance was done particularly in any kind of depth or with any kind of intrigue at any point, but it was fine. It wasn't awful, it just wasn't great. The next one, again, I don't have a physical copy of, we've just got a post-it note, Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. I gave this one a 2.75. I was just bored. I was just really bored. A lot of people had said that this was a character-driven part of the Shadowhunters universe, and I just felt like the characters weren't that intriguing to me. I was so intrigued by Will before I went into this book, and I still was at the end, and I am definitely still going to read the next one. Is it Clockwork Prince or Clockwork Princess? Whichever one of those comes next. I'm definitely still going to read that and see if the story picks up a little bit, but I was just a bit let down. When I heard that this one was set in London, I think, is it in the 1800s? I was so intrigued by that. I was so excited because I felt like that setting could really play a part in the plot and the narrative, but it just didn't for me. I found every part of this quite lacking. The plot, the characters, the setting, just none of them wowed me, unfortunately, which I know a lot of people love this series, but I just, so far I'm not, but I remain hopeful, tentatively hopeful, that I might like the next one. We will see. My library has them all anyway. So the next book on this list is The Final Gambit, which again, I can't remember exactly what I rate this, but I would settle on around a 2.75. Again, I was just bored. I was so bored. The first book, The Inheritance Games, I very much, well, I say very much enjoyed. We'll talk about it in a minute. I enjoyed. It was good. I liked the premise. It didn't blow me away like I think it did a lot of other people when they read it when it initially came out. I feel like it's probably a bit overhyped at this point, but I enjoyed the book, hence why I carried on with the series. But by the time we got to this one, I felt like the original mystery and intrigue from the first book had just gone out the window and we'd completely gone off the rails. This book felt really weirdly separate, despite the fact that it isn't a spin-off. It is in the original trilogy, but it just, I feel like the trilogy maybe could have been a duology, and I don't think we needed all of this. And the next book, along the same vein, The Hawthorn, like I say, the second book in the Inheritance Games trilogy. Kind of same story. I gave this one 3 stars, so I preferred it a little bit. I was still more hooked during the second book. I'd not quite got to the point of complete boredom. But again, I just wasn't as wowed as I thought I was going to be. I'm definitely still going to try and read The Naturals by this author, because that, just from the premise, sounds like it might be a bit more up my street. The next one is The Pairing by Casey McQuiston, which again, I do not have a physical copy of, and this is another 3 stars. So the next, like, a lot of books are all 3 stars. I had a very average couple of reading months. This is a romance between 2 characters who have like known each other forever, childhood best friends to lovers, and then they broke up. And then when they were still together, they booked like a food and wine tour around Europe, and then broke up, and both got a voucher to use separately, but both accidentally end up taking the trip at the same time. So you are traveling around Europe with them, which I enjoyed that part to a point, but I feel like a big part of my issue with this book is that we didn't explore Europe properly. There was a lot of talk of food and wine, which definitely makes sense because they were on a food and wine tour, so that bit didn't bother me. But everything they talked about in this book was just sexual. And I'm not talking about the actual number of smut scenes or whatever in this book. I'm talking about every time they had a conversation with anyone, whether they'd known them 20 years or 20 minutes, it was about sleeping with them. And like, you're in Europe, there are sites, go and sightsee, like go and do something with your time. It just drove me a bit insane by the end that they seemed incapable of going anywhere or having a conversation with anyone or anything in any place without constantly thinking about who they wanted to sleep with. So that just let the book down for me. I did feel the connection between our two main characters. I don't want to say too much about them on purpose, by the way, because there's a bit of a reveal about one of them, so that's why I'm not being like specific about the two main characters. I like them enough. I like the connection between them. I think they probably should be in a relationship. I think they work well together. But just the talk of spice all the time in every conversation really overpowered it for me. If you're currently watching Love Island UK, think Yasmin, which I kind of love Yasmin, by the way, but think Yasmin, how in every conversation that she has on Love Island, she brings up sex at some point. That's this book. That's what this book feels like. But even more frustrating because at least she's sat in a villa with nothing better to do all day. These people are literally travelling around Europe. Like, come on, do something interesting with your time that's not just looking at everyone thinking about who you want to sleep with. Little interlude because I have realised several hours later that I completely forgot to talk about a book. Wretched by McIntyre. This was, guess what? Guess. Yet another 3-star read, but this was a low 3, hence why I'm inserting it in here into the list. This was one of the books that I originally DNF'd and decided to pick back up and give another go. I'm glad I finished it because now I can carry on with the rest of the series and see if the ones that come after this are a little bit more my taste, because I did absolutely love Scarred, which is the book before this. So I remain hopeful. The traffic is not making me hopeful. I remain hopeful that there might still be books in this series for me, but this unfortunately wasn't it. So the premise of this, it's a Wizard of Oz retelling, kind of. So we've got our main character, what's her name, Evelina. She is the daughter of like a massive drug lord, basically. And our male main character is an undercover agent who is like sent to go and infiltrate her family, the whole operation, to try and get them taken down. He has his reasons for this. I don't want to say why, but he has like a really good reason, aside from the fact that she's like dealing drugs, to hate this woman. Like on a personal level, he has a reason to really hate her. So it's definitely an interesting dynamic. But it was just, I don't know, it just didn't hit for me. I found the writing a little bit repetitive in this one, which I didn't find in the first two. It just did not hit for me, unfortunately. Another 3-star read, Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. I really regret not reading this when it came out about 10 years ago. I think if I'd have read this back then, I would have eaten it up. But unfortunately, I think I've just read too much fantasy romance at this point, which is annoying because this book came first. This book was written before the likes of like Powerless and all those other YA fantasy romance that I can see were very inspired by this. I think unfortunately, because this was written like 10 years ago approximately, those books, I'm not saying they're better because I actually don't love the Powerless trilogy, but they have just more elements, more kind of, I don't know, they just had a bit more to them than this. This fell a little bit flat for me, but I think if I'd have read it at the time, I would have loved it. So it makes me sad, but I'm definitely going to read more from Victoria Aveyard. I've seen her online and I think I really would vibe with her as a person. And I like the writing and everything. There wasn't anything in this that was bad or that I didn't like. There just wasn't enough for me. So I'm hoping that maybe her newer releases will hit a bit harder. So I probably won't continue with this series, but I'm definitely going to look into what else she has written and try and find something else that might be a bit more like my speed. I just realised I didn't actually tell you the setup of Red Queen. It's the classic, like, she thinks she's one thing, she ends up being another. She lives in a society where, like, there's two groups, and depending on who you are, you sit in a different group and you get treated differently. It's the classic YA romance at this point. Yet another 3-star read, Love Unwritten by Lauren Asher. This is a romance between Raphael and Ellie, and Ellie is the nanny of Raphael's son. But they kind of knew each other before, but not properly. So she had a crush on him when they were in high school, but from the impression I get, they weren't like friends or anything in high school. I don't think they really knew each other. They just knew of each other. and liked each other a bit on first impression, but didn't know each other. And I think that was a missed trick. Look at the length of this book. I think this would really have benefited from not being full dual timeline. That would have bored me. But I think we could have had a few flashback chapters, or even just a few flashback scenes within the present day chapters that would have really brought their romance to life, because I just wasn't convinced by it. How are you going to tell me I've read a book this long and I'm still not convinced by the romance at the end? And I don't mean that there's anything that kind of screams that they shouldn't be together, but nothing massively screams that they should either. It was very middling to me. That's like my word of the month, is just middling. It was just fine. And I think if this had been like a 300-page romance, that would be much better than... I don't want to read a romance this long and then it just be fine. If you're going to write a book this long, there needs to be a reason for it to be. And at first I thought they would be, because Raphael has like quite a strange relationship with his son, and Ellie has a great relationship with his son. So I thought there was going to be a bit more of a plot around that, and there was a little bit, but it wasn't massively intriguing, to be honest. So another 3-star. This is a generous 3-star, to be honest. I don't know if this should be lower. I don't know ever where to place this or what to say about this book, because I just don't know. I think the reason I'm being harsher on this is because it's an Emily Henry book and I had high expectations, which isn't fair. So I've tried to be objective with where I've put this in the stack and ignore the fact that it's an Emily Henry book. I didn't enjoy this. I'm not going to talk about it for too long, because I talked about it in my vlog and everyone and their cat, mother and dog has spoken about this book, and I have very similar things to say to a lot of other people, to be honest. That I just think this book tried to do too many things and didn't do any of them particularly well. Margaret's story was too drawn out. We didn't get to Margaret's actual story until about 80% into the book, by which point I no longer cared. The romance between whatever on earth their names were, the two writers, was so half-baked, it happened completely off-page. So just don't include it in the book then. Like, if you don't want to write about a romance, just don't have one in. This book would have been better for me without the romance. Or what I think Emily Henry should have done, cut out all the backstory about Margaret's great-great-great-great-great-great-grandma, whoever. Cut that out, make that 2 sentences long, and then cut it. Then really dive into Margaret's story when she's a teenager, going out to all these like parties on James Dean's motorbike, which was 1 sentence of the book, by the way. Let's unpack that stuff a bit more. And then I think the romance in this book should have been sent it, if Emily Henry wanted to do one. I don't think the book needed one, but if Emily Henry wanted to have an element of romance, I think we should have focused more on the relationship between Margaret and Cosmo. That would have been a lot more interesting to me than Alice and Hayden, is that their names? Who I feel like they're only together because they were the only people under the age of approximately 75 in a 100-mile radius. I just don't see anything that actually brings them together or means that they like each other. I also think because Hayden is so cagey throughout the whole book and we don't get his point of view, that I'm even less convinced by the romance, because he feels like a cardboard cutout rather than an actual character. 3 stars. I don't know if that's generous. I just kind of went down the middle because I just didn't know what to rate this. But I was very disappointed, unfortunately. I might reread Funny Story just to make me feel something. Anyway, the next one, Glow of the Everflame, which was the second book. Yeah, the second book in the Kindred Curse saga. This, I have not much to say. It was going downhill in this book. I honestly almost gave this book 1 star, but the ending saved it. And then the third book butchers the ending of the second book anyway. So I don't have much to say about it. It was just that everything I said about the third book, the second book was the lead up to that. Of the main character just getting on my nerves, the love interest starting to lose his personality completely, and then it all just culminated in the third book for me. The Inheritance Games, again, I feel like I've already spoken about this quite a lot. If you don't know the premise of this somehow, even though this has been on the internet, I'm so late to the bandwagon with this. Basically, our main character, what's her name? Avery. She randomly gets told one day that she has inherited billions, including a big mansion, from a man that she doesn't know. She's very confused. She has to go and live in the mansion, and you just see all of that unfold and try and find out why on earth she's got all of this money and this property. And this was quite good. I think I would maybe give this like a I was going to say 3.25. No, I wouldn't. It is a 3-star read. This one was good. Like, it was fine. It was just fine. I need to stop saying the word fine. Another book that was fine, Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. Yet another 3-star read. I actually dread to think what my average rating was, to be honest, for May and June. It must be 3 point something low. Anyway, Swordcatcher. The premise of this is that we've got Kel, that his name? Yes, Kel. He is an orphan, he lives in an orphanage. Someone rocks up one day and says, you need to come to the palace. Kel's like, no, I'm alright, thanks. And they say, no, you have to come, so he goes. The story at the beginning is that the prince is ill and they need someone to cover for him, and Kel looks like the prince. So he attends this dinner in the prince's stead. And then it develops from there. That's not the actual reason, as you might expect, why they actually want him at the palace. But unfortunately, the story doesn't really develop that much from there. Like, it just, I feel like we didn't get far enough in this book again for how long it is. I would have no problem reading a book of this length if we actually got somewhere. But I feel like by the end, we'd not really moved very much from where we were at the beginning. Even though between that bit at the beginning where he goes to the palace and then chapter 2, I think, it's quite a big time jump. He's a child right at the beginning, and then you jump and he's like late teens-ish, I think, or early 20s or something. Quite a big time jump. But then the story just doesn't really move. This was a really baffling read for me because the world was interesting, the premise was interesting. I thought I was literally going to love this. And the longer I read, the more bored I got, and we just didn't go anywhere. So, yet another 3-star. Next one, Spark of the Everflame, first book in the Kindred Curse saga. That's the only thing we're doing these ranking videos, is that it means the series are out of order. Maybe in future I should club series together and put the whole series, like the average of the whole series somewhere maybe. I don't know. Anyway, I didn't do that this time, so it's too late. Spark of the Everflame. So I can now actually talk about the premise of this book. Do I actually remember what the original premise was? Because all I remember about this series is how much I hate the female main character. But let me get this right. So she is like not too poor. Like, she lives in the poor part of town, but she's a healer. So she has like a steady job, which a lot of people don't have. So she's definitely not well off, but she lives quite a comfortable existence. And then they live in a world where there are these people called the Descended who have like magic, and they're obviously the elite people of society, and she hates them. And then her path just starts to cross more and more with them, and the story goes from there. I don't want to spoil too much. Like, the story is whack. To be fair, a lot happens. I can't judge the pacing of these books. We're constantly all over the place. But the first book was quite good. I think I gave the first book like 3.5. I was intrigued as to where the series was going to go. Unfortunately, though, the answer to that was straight downhill. So maybe give the first book a go. And if you love it, you might love the rest of the series. Like, I do feel like I'm an anomaly here. Most people that I've seen talk about this gave it like 4 or 5 stars throughout the 3 books. There is one more book to come out, by the way. So if you don't want to read an uncompleted series, I wouldn't pick it up yet, because the book was supposed to come out months ago and the release date is now 2026. So who knows if the last book will ever actually get published. I think it's going to be the last book. Anyway, I won't be reading it. The first book was good. It was okay. I quite enjoyed it. I was intrigued. I went straight into the second one. Like, the second I finished the first book, straight on my Kindle into the second one. So I can't judge it too harshly, because clearly I liked something about it. But it's the struggle to remember what I liked about it, because I hated the rest of the series so much. I'm back from my water break to talk about yet another book that I had very high expectations for and did not live up. Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This, I really thought was going to be a 6-star read. I'm not going to say a lot about the romance in this book, because I enjoyed going in not knowing who the love interest was going to be, and almost going on that journey with the main character. I really enjoyed that, and it doesn't make it clear, I don't think. I think if you really analysed it, you could probably find out who, but just at a brief glance, I don't think it makes it super clear in the synopsis who the love interest is going to be. So I really enjoyed not knowing that. However, what let this book down for me was, I think the space element was overly technical. I really like space in books. I've read quite a few books where it's to do with NASA or just generally people who like space. And this felt like, it didn't read like a textbook in the style of writing, but the level of detail and information we got, for me, was just a bit too much. It took me out of the story. Anytime Taylor Jenkins Reid started writing about the absolute nuances and the names of like different parts of the aircraft, it was just too technical for me, and it just took me out of the story every single time. And she says in the like little note at the beginning, the foreword, that she did a lot of research, and you can definitely tell, but I think she almost did a bit too much. Obviously she wanted it to be accurate, and I completely appreciate that, but it was just too much for me. Like, if I wanted to know this level of detail about a NASA mission, I would Google it and read about real NASA missions. I wanted like a cute, girly, fun time in space with some heartbreaking moments, as Taylor Jenkins Reid usually does. I didn't expect this book to be like happy. I didn't expect it to be a rom-com. I read and love Taylor Jenkins Reid. I know she doesn't write rom-coms, that's not what I'm trying to say. But I think it was just too heavy on the jargon and the technicalities of everything space related for me. But I did like the romance element of this. I liked the more homey elements. I did enjoy the time she spent at NASA. It was just then, when we got into the conversations of the technicalities, it was just a bit too in-depth for me, but not an awful read. Just didn't wow me as much as I unfortunately thought it would. The Fake Mate. I can't decide which way round these should be. I think the only reason I've put The Fake Mate above Atmosphere is because I read it more recently. I think upon reflection, I would actually put Atmosphere above The Fake Mate. I think I would give this 3.75 and this 3.5, but they keep swapping and changing in my mind. It just feels a bit rude to put The Fake Mate, like a werewolf shifter romance, ahead of this. So maybe let's swap them. Anyway, The Fake Mate. This started off, for the first, I don't know how many pages, for the first however long of this, I thought it was going to be a 5-star read. It was exactly what I needed at the time. I was in a slump. I really needed some contemporary romance. But again, the longer it went on, the worse it got for me. I found the middle of this book really repetitive. I don't think the romance actually really developed. I don't think we got to see enough of them on page actually getting to know each other as people. The premise of this is that they are both werewolves, which in this book they're called shifters. And they're both working as doctors at the same hospital. Basically, a need arises that they need to fake date. I won't spoil anything, but they need to fake date, for both of them. They both have reasons as to why this would work for them. And then obviously, as you expect with fake dating, it gets to a point where it's not fake. But for me, there just wasn't enough development in the middle. This is quite a spicy read, but again, I didn't necessarily have an issue with how many spice scenes there were. It was the fact that I didn't feel like we had enough of them getting to know each other as people alongside the spice scenes or as part of the spice scenes. In something like Not in Love by Ellie Hazelwood, which has, again, a lot of spice scenes, they have a physical relationship before they have an emotional one. I felt like even in the spice scenes themselves in Not in Love, you could see them, you could see barriers coming down, you could feel emotion, they were getting to know each other just in the way that they knew best. Whereas this just didn't feel like that. It just felt like we don't know each other, we're going to sleep together for a bit, and now we're in love, but there was just no development for me in the middle. So yeah, I think I would give this, I think I would definitely upon reflection put this below Atmosphere. I think this was a 3.5 and Atmosphere was a 3.75. We are now into the next 3 books are 4-star reads. So we're getting to the books that I actually enjoyed and didn't really have many issues with this month. So I'm going to talk about the next 2 together because they're from the same series and I rate them both the same anyway. So actually, no, I would give this a 3.75 and this a 4, but this comes first, so it makes more sense. Right, anyway, 3.75, 4 stars. This is the novella, this is the last book in the series. You read this before this. They are both part of this series here. So you read the duology, These Violent Delights and Our Violent Ends, which is a Romeo and Juliet retelling. You then read Foul Lady Fortune, which follows one of the prominent side characters from this duology. You then read this, which links all of that together, and then you read this, which rounds it all out and finishes off the series. So, I'll talk about this first because it comes first, but I preferred this to this. So, the reason I love this so much is because of the couples. I'm not going to tell you who they are because it does spoil the first duology, but you follow 2 couples in here, and I adore them both. They are my 2 favourite couples. There are a lot of couples in this series, but it's not a romance series. One thing I adore about this series is that I feel like the romances feel really organic and they fit seamlessly into the plot and into the books as a whole. It doesn't feel like the shoehorned in. It feels so natural. But anyway, my favourite 2 couples are the couples that we follow here, hence why I ended up loving it and giving it 4 stars. I think it would be very hard for a novella to be 5 stars for me. 4 stars for a novella is pretty much as high as you can realistically get. But yeah, I love this. I really, really enjoyed it. This one, slightly less so. I just think this was not weirdly paced, but weirdly balanced. So in this book, we are obviously rounding out a series, but you actually get a new element introduced in this, in that I can't really talk about the main plot because it would spoil everything else, but a war happens. Not the war that you might expect, like an actual external to the people in this book, a war. but it's a background plot, and I'm not really sure how you make a war a background plot. I think this book would have benefited from the first, I don't know, bit, rounding out what happens in Foul Lady Fortune, and then the rest of it I wish we'd focused on life post all of this in the time of a war. I think that would have been a lot more intriguing to me anyway. I feel like the events of the previous 3 books and novella just dragged out a bit too long in this one. I don't think, it's not even that I don't think the book needed to be this long. I feel like the book could have been this long and still have been really impactful, but we need to focus more on a war. Like, I'm not sure how you can make an actual war between like countries a background plot. I don't know. There are several conflicts that go on throughout this series, like different wars between different groups of people, but this one was like a war, not a like a fantasy made up, like, do you know what I mean? I don't know if I'm making any sense at all. This one was a much larger scale war and it just didn't play enough of a part in driving the plot, which to me makes no sense, because in real life it very much would, you know, drive how everything works. But yeah, that was pretty much my only criticism of this. I still really enjoyed it, but by the end I was just ready for it to be done, and that's a sign for me that it's probably not quite a 4-star read. So 3.75, 4 stars. The last 3 books, we're nearly there, guys. Deep End by Ali Hazelwood, a 4-star read. I enjoyed this more than I expected, definitely. I really did like the romance. I like the 2 main characters. I really like Lucas's sense of humour. He had a very dry, witty sense of humour, which is very similar to my own. So I enjoyed that. I didn't mind how spicy it was. I feel like they were getting to know each other on an emotional level through their friendship alongside the spice. The reason this wasn't any higher than a 4 for me, might be a 4.25, but the reason it wasn't any closer to a 5 is because of Pen. Now, I'm very conflicted on how I feel about Pen, because do I agree with the things she did and said towards the end of the book? Absolutely not. Do I on some level understand what she did and said because she's a human being in a weird situation? Yes. But I just don't think we needed that conflict that she introduced. I don't think we needed an ex in this book. If you don't know, this book is about Lucas and what was her name? Scarlet. And Pen's... So I did this weird thing in the vlog where I read it. Lucas, Scarlet. And then in the middle, my thumb, we've got Pen. Pen is Lucas's ex, and she's on the same team, like swim team, as Scarlet. People make out that Scarlet and Pen are like best friends. They're not. They're friendly with each other, they get on, they actually become better friends throughout the course of the book than they were at the beginning. But these aren't lifelong best friends. They just know each other, they're on the same swim team, and then they grow close throughout the book. Pen introduces the both of them after her and Lucas have broken up and says, you two have the same preferences, why don't you explore that? And again, from what I heard people talk about this, assumed that Scarlet and Lucas were immediately like, oh yeah, let's do it, which I found weird. That's not the case. I don't want to spoil the book, but if you're also worried about that, be rest assured that there is deliberation. They don't just sleep together 3 seconds after Pen says that. I think it was around, was it almost like 40%-ish into the book? That might be wrong. It was a decent way into the book before that part of the plot actually was introduced, like before it actually happened, I mean. And Pen mentions it like right at the beginning. So there is definitely time where Scarlet and Lucas are like, should we do this? Like we don't know what to do. This is a really weird situation. And yeah, so I didn't mind that bit. Their actual relationship, and it was fine. However, I just wish they had a different meet cute. It's not that I wish Pen wasn't in the book, but I wish she was just not Lucas's ex. I don't think we needed the ex. I think we could have had a nice meet cute where they meet at a swim meet because he's a diver, she's a swimmer. Maybe they just met at the pool. Or what I think would have worked well is if they had a mutual friend that knew both of their preferences and that friend introduced them instead. And something else I found a bit weird about this was that for some reason, Pen and Lucas don't want to tell anyone that they've, or more Pen I think, doesn't want to tell anyone they've broken up, and I could never quite figure out why. I don't think any of the reasons given were that good. So that was weird that Scarlet and Lucas couldn't really publicly grow as a couple because everyone thought that Lucas and Pen were still together, which again, I don't think we needed that conflict. I just don't think it was necessary. I think Ali Hazelwood maybe tried to do a bit much in here in terms of having tension, but I think there would have been enough tension. Like, we could have just made up something a bit more simple than having an ex involved. I don't know. I don't really know what I would suggest other than just don't have pen as the X. I don't think it was necessary. But I did enjoy reading this. Whenever I wasn't reading this, all I wanted to do was pick it up and read it, which has not been happening with a lot of the books that I've been reading. So that was a sure sign that this is above a 4-star for me. I think I would give it a 4.25 as my final rating. Yeah, it definitely wasn't perfect. There were things I would absolutely change, but they didn't stop me from enjoying the book. I just would have enjoyed it even more had we not had a weirdo X involved the whole time. Oh, I lied. I forgot there's a post-it note. So we've now got 3 books left. The next one, which I think I would also... I feel weird giving it the same rating as like a book about smutty swimmers who like to do sexual things, because it's The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. I think I would give this like a 4.45 something. I don't know exactly, but what I do know is that this book is completely harrowing and heartbreaking, and just when you think it can't get any worse, it does. Every time this character goes through something and you think that is her low point, it gets worse. And I don't really want to tell you what the book is about because I went in completely blind, but as with a lot of Kristen Hanna's books, it is war related, but this one doesn't happen in the time of a war. So our main character, her dad is a war vet who fought in the Vietnam War, and it's following after he's home and the consequences that has on the family. I don't really want to say too much more than that, but I so much preferred this to the women. I really didn't enjoy the women at all, which I read a couple of months ago. I don't want to say I enjoyed this because I didn't. It was horrific. It was heartbreaking, but I just connected to it. It just got me, even though I've never been through, thank goodness, anything like what the main character goes through in this book. Something about it just spoke to me in a way that the women didn't, and it was just, the writing in this was just so intricate. So like even the descriptions of the setting just perfectly complemented the plot and the characters and the emotion, and I just think this was an impeccably written book. The last 2 books were both 5 stars, so we did have some luck this month. We did have a couple of 5 stars. I keep saying this month, it's 2 months. Anyway, Beg, Borrow or Steal by Sarah Adams. I adore this series. I read the cheat sheet a few years ago and liked it, but had quite a lot of problems with it, specifically the female main character. I would urge you, if you've read the cheat sheet, because that was quite popular, and you thought Sarah Adams isn't for me as a result of that, please read this series. This is the 3rd book in a teeny tiny romance series. Like, it's smaller than Small Town. It's got like barely anything in it, and it follows a series of siblings. So the first book was about the brother, and then the second book was about one of the sisters, and then this is about another one of the sisters. So the sister in this book is a teacher. For me, it's primary school, but she's American, so I think elementary school, young kids. And Jack, the love interest, is a teacher at the same school, but he moves away before the book starts to get married. He's back at the start of the book and he's not married, and the story ensues from there. Oh, and also they don't get on. They don't like each other at all. They've had like a rivalry. They went to the same college as well, so they've had a rivalry going on for quite some time, and this just felt so beautiful to me. This is the epitome for me of seeing people fall in love on the page. And you might think, isn't that the point of a romance book, Phoebe? And I would say yes, but not a lot of them actually get it right, and this really did for me. It felt like you saw every single second of them falling in love, but in a really succinct, small, easy to read book. I just felt, I just felt everything that they felt. I feel like I really saw every stage of the relationship very organically happen on page, and I just loved that. There's nothing about this that's particularly unique or groundbreaking, but it's just the emotion in it for me, and it just felt real, and I always love that in a romance book, where it just feels just a good, solid, believable romance. Like, that's all I'm looking for a lot of the time, and this filled that bill perfectly. And then the best book that I read across May and June, Watch Me by Tahereh Mafi. I've took the dust jacket is there behind me because I've got this gorgeous edition. Where did I actually get this from? I think I just got this from The Works. Like, it's not a fairy loot or anything, but it's got beautiful sprayed edges. It says special first edition, and is it signed? I don't think it is. No, I don't believe it's a signed copy. I don't think The Works really do signed copies. Anyway, I'm obsessed with this edition. I think it's literally beautiful. Anyway, this comes after the Shatter Me series, so I actually can't talk too much about the plot of this, even though this is the first book in a series. I would say you kind of have to read the Shatami series before you read this, which is here, which I love anyway. I would recommend this in its own right. I adore the Shatami series. By the end, it's absolutely whack. Like, the last book, Imagine Me, I honestly didn't enjoy that much because I thought it was a bit ridiculous. But the first few books, like 6-star reads. I adore that series. Even though the last one's not good, the whole series is still a 6-star for me because the rest of it was so good. Yeah, I can't talk about too much, but what I can say is we follow one of the younger siblings of one of the characters here, is the main character of this book. And there is a romance, but it's definitely not a big part of the plot. It is dual point of view, so you get to see both the FMC and the MMC. But you don't really see them actually... I don't want to say too much, but the romance isn't fully fledged by the end of this book, basically. I think that will come throughout the series, which is similar to the Shatami series as well. You get it introduced quite early, but it really slowly progresses along with the rest of the plot. But the plot itself is very fast-paced. I'm talking on, like, page 1. We've got guns out, knives to throats, people about to die. Like, we are straight into the action in this one. It was just so engaging right from the very first page. At no point did I want to put this down. I just constantly wanted to read it and know what happened and just follow along with these characters. And you do get to see your favourite characters from the Shatami series. I will tell you that much. You do get to see them in here. So, yeah. I'm sad that I can't tell you too much more because I just really don't want to spoil it. It's 10 years after, but it's directly linked to the plot of this. Like, I just can't really tell you what it's about without completely spoiling the ending of the Shatami series. But yeah, I would 100% recommend this if you have read and loved the Shatami series and you're a bit unsure about spin-offs, which I tend to be. I'm very funny about spin-offs and whether or not they're going to spoil the series. I think this is only going to act as almost a redemption arc for how the Shatami series ended, to be honest. So if you loved Shatami but you're a bit unsure about carrying on, I would 100% recommend this book. And they are all of the books that I read in May and June. Thank you so much for watching what I assume is quite a long video, but thank you for sticking with it if you did get to this point. If you did enjoy, please do give it a thumbs up down below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!